Hello, everybody. It's Joe from the Middle Ground Mike. Your trusted voice cutting through the noise, no left, no right, just forward with facts. And tonight we're going on a journey that will change how you see a lot of things in your pantry. We're going to talk about Kraft Heinz, the ultra-processed empire that's been quietly making a lot of people sick, unintentionally or not, I don't know, for years. There's hidden sugars designed to hook you from childhood, cancer-linked chemicals in the food, and they're making people sick while raking in billions. And the lead contamination in kids' Lunchables that had parents screaming in 2024 and 2025, this is the truth they bury in the fine print. If you like this show and you like this content, please go to buymeacoffee.com/TMGM. Donate what you can, even if it's $1, help us move this show forward. You know, imagine this. You open your fridge right now. That bottle of Heinz ketchup is loaded with sugar engineered to make you crave more. Your Oscar Mayer, maybe not even Oscar Mayer, any hot dog. A lot of them that are generic, right? They actually nitrates that the World Health Organization classifies as carcinogenic, the same category as tobacco. Capri Sun pouches, as much sugar as a candy bar. You know, it's marketed to kids as healthy, but Velveeta, a real cheese. It's a chemical melt full of additives that studies link to hyperactivity in children. And it actually tastes good. That's the worst part. You know, Lunchables, the convenient build-your-own-wrist kits, grab in a rush. I used to feed them to my kids. You know, in 2024, every single one tested by Consumer Reports was contaminated with lead, cadmium, and phthalates. Heavy metals with no technical safe level, especially for growing brains. California has a limit, but when you actually look at what a lot of scientists have said, there is no actual safe level. You know, stay with me. We're not fear-mongering because we're going to be fair. You know, there are documented facts from independent labs, lawsuits, government data. We're going to walk through all this together, step by step, so you leave empowered, not scared, because that's what we're going to do here at the Middle Ground Mike. We're not just going to drop truth bombs. We give you tools to push back. And if you're already feeling that fire in your gut, as you're nodding along, thinking, finally, someone's saying it, then you're part of our community. Support us. Sign, subscribe, follow whichever platform you're watching on. You know, but let's start where the real power lies. Obviously, it's in the ownership web, right? Because Kraft Heinz isn't just a food company. It's part of a financial machine where the same investors profit when you buy their junk, when you get sick from it. It's still that same conflict of interest. So even if these companies weren't directly trying to do this, how can you not do this when you're tied to both? Even if you're not trying to, this is what's going to happen. It's a direct result. You know, it's wild to me. You know, obesity, like I said in the previous video, it's 42%, 140 plus million Americans struggling with it. I'm one of them, but I'm taking steps. You know, diabetes in over 38 million Americans and another 96 million are not pre-diabetic. You know, consolidation in this industry, let's kind of talk about that a little bit real quick. It really started in the 80s, late 80s, you know, but today, just 10 companies control 80% of supermarket brands, according to Oxfam. It's not real choice. It's an illusion while they tighten the grip and control what you do. You know, families are spending an average of $12,000 a year on healthcare. You know, how many parents skip vacations or second jobs because of medical bills tied to diet diseases, you know? But let's, you know, but to stay balanced as we always do here, the scale does keep prices low technically. It keeps it affordable for a lot of families. Lunchables are under $3. It's considered a lifeline sometimes for some U.S. households. I think roughly 12%. You know, it's putting people in real tough spots. These companies got the funds to make things right. You know, like Heinz is reducing water use by 15% in tomato sourcing through better farming partnerships. So, you know, they are taking some steps. But where the problem with the issue with the Lunchables are, and we're going to get into it later in this episode, is that it was only removed from the national school lunch. Okay, think about what I just said and now follow along. You know, this web extends to their corporate siblings, though, too. Mondelez Oreos, 38 grams sugar per serving. Lucky Charms, 38% sugar by weight. You know, Nestle pushing everything that has that in it, right? You know, like, it's frustrating. You know, let's talk about the products that we trust every day that I used to trust. I trusted these products, put them in my family, and I've got a problem with that. And then I got a problem with the fact that you know there's a problem and you do very minimal about it. That's why America's frustrated, corporate America. That's why they're upset. A lot of people know, but they didn't understand. We didn't know. that these things were going on, right? But now that it's out there, you're still being just so sluggish about it. Do the right thing, not just talking points. Gosh, I hate talking points like that. But anywho, let's get back to the story. Heinz ketchup is 20 to 25% sugar by weight. That's contributing to our national average of 17 teaspoons of added sugar daily. An addiction engineered from the first Oscar Mayer hot dogs, but to be fair, a lot of hot dogs are packed with sodium nitrates. The World Health Organization classifies sodium nitrates as Group 1 carcinogens, the same as tobacco and asbestos. Studies show, according to the WHO, that they increase, colorectal cancer risk by 18%. Billions eaten yearly. Billions. Think about that. Capri Suns, they're marketed as fruit juice to kids, but one pouch is equal to a candy bar, 10 grams or more. Velveeta, it's technically not real cheese, but man, is it really good when you get it right. It's a pasteurized prepared cheese product. It actually does say that on the package. Full of modified starches, artificial colors linked to hyperactivity in your children. Think about if you're feeding your kids a lot of nachos, things like this. If you look at the ingredients and you're going, oh my God, my kids are bouncing off the walls, there may be some things that are contributing to that. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. You may want to talk to yours, but let's kind of really get down to it, right? But the one that seems to really keep me up at night lately, not lately, I mean, the lawsuit's been settled per se, but what really bothers me is, we did the sickness synergy episode, right? And that one's done pretty well. The Campbell's episode was huge. Appreciate all the support on that. But this one really got me because just like Campbell's, they've done very little with Lunchables to really change it. Just like Campbell's, the only thing they really said is it's not 3D printed chicken and pretty much blew off everything else. Well, Kraft, all you did was pull it out of the lunch menu for national schools. But we're going to get into where the part is really jacked up. What is still in it, not modified, and what it links to something else that was a national crisis in this country. It's those fun, build your own kits we grab for school Lunchables. I ate them. Heck, I've eaten them a couple times as an adult. Because we're so busy. Billions sold, trusted by millions of parents and millions of kids like you and me. But in 2024, Consumer Reports tested 12 popular kits. The results hit like a boom, a gut punch. Every single one was contaminated with lem, the camdium, the phthalates, right? But let's really kind of break it down a little bit to the different ones, okay? And again, I'm not trying to trash Kraft Heinz. That's up for you to do. I'm just telling you there's certain things I will not be buying anymore. In certain areas, they have taken actions on certain products. But overall, Lunchables, you dropped the ball. All right, let's get into it. Turkey and cheddar cracker stackers. Approximately 0.37 micrograms of lead. That's 74% of California's strict maximum allowable dose of 0.5, mcgs per day, for reproductive harm. And think about that. We're eating things like this, and we have rising mental diseases. We have rising rates in autism. I'm not saying this is the thing for autism, okay? Don't go crazy. I'm just saying a lot of these things, when you combine everything together, it can contribute. The pepperoni pizza kits clocked in at 73%, about 0.365 mcgs. The extra cheesy pizza, 69%. Phthalates showed up in 99% of non-organic kits. Hormone disruptors that studies linked to 10 to 20% higher infertility risks with long-term exposure. We've got a declining birth rate in the United States. Hello. Now to the human cost. These aren't just numbers. There are kids. The lead exposure, even at these levels, can drop IQ, supposedly, by 2 to 10 points per microgram sometimes, according to decades of research. It spikes ADHD rates in 8 to 15% of vulnerable children and causes behavioral issues like aggression and learning delays. Cadmium that's in it, it accumulates and, it accumulates in you, just like that's part of what contributed to a water crisis in a certain city we're going to get to. It accumulates in your body and it increases kidney failure risk, right? Weakening bones. You ever think about sports? Like, man, these guys always get hurt a lot more these days. Well, think about this. And it weakens bones by 25%, the cadmium does. Sodium, a single kit has 1,500 milligrams, 65% of a child's daily limit, contributing to hypertension and rates up to 27% in the youth. That's just wild. I mean, it's wild. There's no safe level. Every bit adds risk. EPA and CDC consensus, even before the RFK time, imagine your child only eating one daily over weeks. It could push the blood levels into dangerous territory for toddlers. The lawsuit started in April 2024, multiple class actions about that, outraged mothers, fathers, accusing Kraft Heinz of fraud, marketing Lunchables as healthy and balanced while hiding the heavy metals and phthalates. The Milberg firm escalated in March 2025, filing claims of consumer deception, not disclosing unsafe lead levels. Supposedly, it violates California's Prop 65 and seeking damages for millions of misled buyers. But here's the bitter outcome that still, really, really, really makes my blood boil. The main New York federal case was voluntarily dismissed with prejudice by the plaintiffs on January 7th, 2025, meaning they dropped it completely and it can't be refiled. No settlement money for families, no court order changes, no admission of wrongdoing from Kraft Heinz, even if it was hey, we didn't realize ABC, not even a BS answer. But why did it end this way? Kraft filed a motion in last November in 2024, arguing that trace levels were naturally occurring and below the federal limits, which technically they are legally right. But long-term exposure to lead leads to problems. Hello, Flint. Remember, they said the water was safe there too at one point. Not Kraft, but the government. The plaintiffs likely faced an uphill battle, on causation, showing these, it's hard to show these low levels have done any specific injuries, to be fair to Kraft. But, there's plenty of studies out there that show with long-term exposure to these chemicals, especially lead, makes kids and people sick. That part, they can't deny. But here's where they get you. They go, well, we only recommend eating this much of it. Why do they have those recommendations on there? Obviously, it goes with the diet part, that they have to put on the nutrition label. But they can also say, hey, if you would have followed our directions, you wouldn't be sick. So, what? I get it. But at the same time, you're making billions of dollars. You can figure out a way to make this without that. We shouldn't even have to have that discussion. But they don't operate alone. Let's kind of dive a little bit into the comparisons for a couple things, right? We're going to do one thing right here. Analysts watching the space say if new lawsuits emerge, they could get crazy amounts of money, especially if it's in California. The payouts could reach $100 million. Gerber's baby food faced a $25 million lawsuit it settled over metals in the baby food. Think about it. We all trust Gerber's. I have a 7-year-old. I trust a Gerber. Okay. I've got a 16-year-old too. I trusted these people too. It's insane. It's insane that they do it. And it's insane that they're allowed to do it. That's the problem. But together as parents and consumers in our middle ground community, we're the ones that are going to put this, out there to hopefully help protect the next generation. Outrage is justified. Use it. Don't do nothing stupid, but use it to do the right things for your family. But like I said, we always want to try to stay as balanced as possible. Those things do offer convenience. There are some healthy options out there. You have to check those out. I'm not the one that should be recommending that for you. I'm just telling you the information that I found. But let's kind of let's get down into it. So I told you a couple times, check this part out, right? I said, we're really gonna get into this. The Flint water crisis and Lunchables, they're linked. Not directly they're involved with each other, but this is where it's a problem and why you should be pissed off, ready to never buy one of their products again if they don't want to do something about it. Lunchables lead 0.37 mcg per kit is less than a small lead paint chip from old homes. 10 to 100 if ingested, it can cause acute poisoning, right? But it's more insidious because it's repeated exposure in the food. It's not ate one lead paint chip, you had the problems, okay, you had to get... No, people are eating this all the time. It's comparable to the chronic low dose risks from contaminated drinking water, like Flint's 10 mcg per liter, causing citywide blood level spikes, tons of diseases that spike from it. But don't worry, it's okay, because, in your Lunchable, it's below the limit. But remember, some of these things build up in your system and cause those problems. So the one time may not hurt you. Prolonged exposure will hurt you. That's not a debate, that's a fact. But here's the key difference. Paint chips are rare now, thanks to bans. Food contamination every day is hidden from us. And it's getting harder to avoid people finding out about it. No safe level means every microgram counts, especially when kids' brains are wiring, right? They're developing the neurons, everything they learn, they soak it up like a sponge. Imagine the cumulative effect over a school year, over their childhood. We can't let this slide. Kraft, do the right thing. Stay with me. Our community is going to lead the charge. We're going to do what we can by educating the consumers, but they don't operate alone. You got Oreos, Ritz crackers, all these things, right? Nestle even has a dark history of, it was in the 70s, but they've gotten away from it. But think about this. Nestle, one of our most trusted brands too, in the 70s, they had a baby formula scandals where aggressive marketing in poor countries led to infant deaths by discouraging breastfeeding. Same pattern here, right? Exploit vulnerable markets with inferior products while rich nations get safe versions, unless you're America. The big ultra processed food lawsuit filed in December 2025 in San Francisco now targets 11 giants like Kraft Heinz, Mondelez, General Mills, and Nestle, accusing them of deceptive, addictive marketing that creates a public nuisance. Deeper links to diabetes risk 20 to 30%. Colorectal cancer plus 29%. In high consumers. Heart failure plus 50%. Plus 55% obesity. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease goes up 33% in adults. The annual cost, $190 billion. The case is ongoing as of late 2025 in this aspect, right? Seeking restitution and health program funding, with potential to cost billions, like the tobacco master settlement of $206 billion. Preying on babies, poor nations, even poor people here in America, that's corporate calculus backwards thinking sometimes. Not all corporations. There are a lot of corporations since RFK has been in there, and I'm not necessarily yet. They're trying to do the right thing. I want to be fair, and I want to be upfront about that. But we can't let up because a couple are. We have to keep going. It's up to us. We set the tone for our kids' future. Our kids' future starts with us, not DC, not your state capital. It starts with us. We fix it. We don't give them a choice. But, listeners, we caught these signs, right? These positives are reactive to damage control, though. The ultra-processed foods rose from 58% of calories in 2000 to over 70% today. Global sales are exploding. Let's kind of look at the chemical web a little bit. We're only going to go over a couple, though. His chemicals. Like what? The U.S. allows BVO, MSG, potassium bromate. We've talked about that in other episodes, right? They're banned in 40-plus countries. It's cleaner abroad, unless super poor country, or here in America, we're the toxic market because even in some poor countries, they have more rules than we do. Profit over lives, but some voluntary bans, but it's still profit over lives. The revolving door, regulators to corporate payoffs, the rules bent. A regulator quits the government, goes to work at a company, however there for many years, quits that company, goes back into a similar job at the same regulator that regulates that company. That's insanity. And it's insanity that we let them convince us that Republicans, Democrats, they're going to do something about it. They've both been in there and done absolutely nothing. And if they have done things, it obviously has not worked. Because guess what? Even after that lawsuit for Lunchables, they're still lead in the Lunchables. They're still lead to this day. Today, there is still trace lead in those Lunchables because they hide under the guise of it's under the daily limit. What the bleep? I'll even say it. What the fuck? It's insanity to me. How do we get here? As I'm looking at this a little bit more, some of my notes I got here, Kraft Heinz has stated that these levels, though, I just want to be fair, because I'm not trying to go crazy, but the federal standards, and they fall below FDA action thresholds. They've also announced efforts to reduce, not eliminate, reduce heavy metals through ingredient sourcing changes and supplier audits. Some reformulated products reportedly show lower levels than earlier versions, but it's still in there. But compliance doesn't mean elimination, Kraft. Lead can still enter food through soil contamination, water used in agriculture. Campbell's is a perfect example. The chicken feed they use has trace amounts of pesticides on it, and then it's designed to make those chickens bigger. So you are still getting it to a degree. And the processing equipment, eliminating it entirely at an industrial scale, it is going to be pretty difficult. But this is the United States. We can take this task on and we can win. This is America. We don't bow down. But what has changed most significantly is pressure. not physics. Public scrutiny, the lawsuits, school removals drive reform faster than any voluntary pledges will ever do. History shows that accountability can help accelerate safety improvements, i.e. Richard Nixon and OSHA in the 60s, I believe, or early 70s, one of the two. But it's not always all bad news. There is a lot of companies out there going away from petroleum-based dyes. Some of that stuff is going on. I don't want to be like completely like, but it's insane. But there is optimism here, but we can't be complacent. It means we have to recognize the scrutiny that scrutiny can lead to safer systems. Parents didn't buy Lunchables because they were careless or uninformed. They bought them because modern life is demanding, expensive, and everything is time constrained. Two-income households are common, and single parents are often stretched very thin even if they have support. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, over 60% of households with children have two working parents. Food prices have risen significantly in recent years, and time scarcity is real. Convenience is not laziness. It is survival for many families. Lunchables fill the gap created by broader economic pressures. That is why this conversation must avoid shame. The goal is transparency. We want to get it fixed. We already know the past. We want to fix it for the future. It is our job to fix it for the future. And it's crazy. I gotta go over this Flint thing one more time because this part really kills me, man. I want to really go into a deep detail about it. During the Flint water crisis, many homes tested between 5 and 20 parts per billion in lead in their drinking water. The EPA's action level is 15 parts per billion. It became a national alarm and a symbol of regulatory failure. This happened under all parties being in there. But Flint was not dangerous because one glass of water on one day. It was dangerous because repeated exposure over time for children. A child who eats Lunchables occasionally may ingest small amounts of lead. A child who eats them regularly, whether at school or at home, may accumulate exposure over weeks, months, and years. The developing brain is the same, and the neurotoxin is the same. Only the delivery system is different. Water is regulated aggressively because ingestion is assumed, while food relies on agricultural sourcing and processing standards that allow more contamination variance. According to the FDA, over 90% of dietary lead exposure in children comes from food. Not water, food. That statistic alone explains why this conversation matters. Again, look at mental health issues. These are neurotoxins that can be in there. One dose does not do it. Prolonged, plus all the other products that we eat. No safe level is not a slogan. It's science. Lead exposure, increased rates of ADHD, behavioral disorders, learning difficulties, you name it. It's just, when companies say they meet the federal guidelines, they're describing legal compliance, not biological safety. Federal thresholds are often compromises between feasibility and risk, not guarantee of harmlessness. Flint technically had guidelines for a period of time until the harm became undeniable. Think about that middle ground. That distinction matters when evaluating corporate assurances or assurances from anybody, government, private, anybody. Make sure you always keep that in mind. Flint taught us what happens when warnings are ignored. Lunchables remind us that vigilance does not stop with water. This isn't about fear, and it's not about ideology, because both parties have messed this up. It's about trust, responsibility, and learning from failure. Accountability does not mean tearing everything down. It means demanding better going forward. That demand only works when people stay informed. If you want independent work like this to continue, support the show at buymeacoffee.com/TMGM. Share this episode, talk about it, keep asking questions. No left, no right, forward. This is Joe. I'll see you on Sunday.